Caroline are an 8-piece post-rock band from London and the artists behind one of the year's most exciting releases. I sat down with Freddie and Mike before their show in Copenhagen to chat about finding the Caroline sound, collaborating with pop superstars, and touring their sophomore record. Freddie.
How are you?
Mike. From the band Caroline. You guys have been described as so many different things, from folk to post-rock. I'm curious as to what Caroline is from your perspective.
It's an interesting question because we never said, like, let's start a band. It's just like a group of friends playing together and accidentally sort of writing music, and then that group of friends just kind of grew and grew. But in terms of musical descriptors, anything's kind of valid.
Because you started as a duo and then gradually expanded?
It was kind of a duo or trio. It was like kind of post-punky, shouty guitar thing. And then they asked if I wanted to come and try playing like a second guitar, and then it kind of turned into something else. It was quite a casual thing in some way. People would kind of come and go in terms of players because there was kind of no pressure. And there wasn't like a band name or anything for a long time.
In your current configuration, you're an octet. How do you go about balancing each member's creative approach?
I think, like in most musical projects, regardless of the number of members, there's generally a nominal lead singer. And I think we have that in Mike, Jasper and Casper, kind of like in inverted commas. I'd say creatively the buck stops with them. That's not to say they rule with like an iron fist or anything. In theory, Mike's there breathing down my neck, like saying the right thing. No. Yeah, he's like, come on, man. What did we talk about before? No, but
what am I paying you
yeah,
for?
literally. I'd say for the first record, for sure, it lent more in that direction. But as we've grown as a group and spent more time as an 8, we toured the first record loads, which is intense because it's 8 people in a 9-seater van. So we were really on top of each other, but it actually meant for a really positive experience because we all got on really well. By the time the second album came around, we were all much more involved because we all were more familiar with each other, like personally and creatively. The load was shared. As even still, Mike, Jasper and Casper, like they'd come generally with an idea or like a motif or whatever it might be, just to start to a song. But, you know, we went away for periods of time as a 8 and all had stuff to do with it, which was really fun. It was much more detailed in that way. Like we all had something to say and it wasn't like falling on deaf ears. It was really like mutual and fun. It's why the album, I think, sounds as good as it does, because there's a lot of different personality in there.
That familiarity really comes through in the sound of the record.
Thanks.
Like it does sound like a group of mates doing something together, and still has that kind of garagey, not in the genre sense, but in the spirit of it.
Definitely, there's a DIY-ness which we're really happy about. That's like a crucial part of like the touring. Like we don't have a tour manager. Mike and Jasper are basically our TMs. I mean, we all muck in, but we advance our own shows. He does it. They drive us. He does that too.
Wow.
I think, he's kind of like the main guy, basically.
That's what Mike.
Yeah. Mike. I mean, it's we're not by any means a big band, but I think bands of our size and stature, the shows we play and stuff generally have a tour manager with them. It's very DIY, which is, I think, fun in theory again, but like quite tiring. But the DIY-ness in general is a really important part of the project.
This latest record has this sort of tension to the sound. I'd describe it as a blissful sense of the album collapsing or disintegrating as you listen to it. How do you go about making an album with a sound like that?
That's like an aspect of like writing music that we always need to access. There's a stark contrast, or there's kind of something being corrupted, or there are opposing elements, but in a kind of like very upfront and foregrounded way. For some reason, that's just like one of the codes that we have. If it's not like that, then it doesn't really sound like our band. I don't really know why. That's just something we've landed on. It wasn't so much that it was like, let's try and do this. It's more that like, until we get to that point with a musical concept, it doesn't really sound like something that has legs. It's hard to answer like how that happens, because that's kind of like sort of part of the whole point of doing it.
Right. Well, I wanted to ask you about the mechanics of it. Like, there are moments on the album that feel totally improvisational, and there are other moments that feel extremely calculated, and they kind of complement one another. Do you guys tend to favor one methodology over the other?
The whole point is the collaged aspect of it, and improvisation or improvisation within particular parameters is like a kind of exercise that we've done for such a long time. There's so many interesting things you can generate that way. One interesting kind of aesthetic outcome of that is like organized chaos. If you record that, then like you can try and like replicate that, and that's also kind of an interesting thing, to kind of replicate something which was originally improvised and unorganized, or like organized in the moment rather than organized in advance. And then there's also the kind of pop music songwriting. That's the kind of like sweet bit, you know, that always needs to be in there as well. At least with this record. I kind of think with our first record too, but it was maybe subtler. But
like lent into the pop writing more, I'd say, like that side of thing, like really strong hooks and melodies and like lovely chord sequences, kind of amongst the other things that Mike's talking about. Yeah.
In terms of the pop influence, you've had a key pop contributor in Caroline Polachek.
True.
Tell me about how that came to be.
So she followed us on Instagram. Like, it sounds like cringe to talk about Instagram, but it is like a weirdly crucial part of the industry. But anyway, she followed us on Instagram like maybe like 4 years ago, and we weren't big at all. We were like, this is pretty crazy because everyone's a really big fan of hers. So that happened, and that kind of sowed the seed of, you know, oh, like maybe one day we do something with her, who knows. And we had this song which we called Backstreet Boys. That was just its name in its demo process because the guitars and the melody kind of sounded like them. Anyway, we recorded it, and it wasn't like weak, but it was the weakest one from the week of recording we did. And we were like, this is a good tune, and it could be really good, but we should think about how we can make it good. And I think it was like, let's ask her to do it.
When we first wrote the vocal line, we were like, oh, this feels like something, for some reason, like I can hear this in Caroline Polachek's voice. It felt like something about the way the melody moved, the kind of jumps and like the like vocal flips she does. For some reason, it's just like, I could just hear it. There isn't really a vocalist like her,
no.
and songwriter and producer and everything else.
Yeah. Singular.
It was kind of like a dream thing that we kind of, maybe we'll ask her if she'd like to sing on this song. It felt maybe just unrealistic that she'd want to do it, but she was really up for it.
We messaged her on Instagram nervously, like this big, like, don't worry if not, it's fine. You know, that classic, like yeah, I don't know. When you're asking someone who owes you money for the money, but you're nervous for us, it was that kind of vibe. Like, don't worry, it's fine if you don't want to do it. But she replied pretty quickly, like, I think within an hour, and she was like, I'm in at the moment. She sent us a voice note, which we were like, fucking hell, this is Caroline Polachek, like talking to us. It's really like, it was really cool. Sent her the album. She listened to it loads, and she was like, I really, really love it, which was obviously amazing to hear in itself. And she said she'd love to take a crack at it, basically, like pretty quickly. And then within like, I don't know, another couple of days, she'd sent us a really polished demo of her singing over our song, which was another whoa moment. And it's pretty similar to how it ended up sounding on the. He's laughing at me saying "whoa" moment. I think, yeah, yeah.
But totally,
like, I've never said that before in my life. Yeah, another whoa moment.
Another one.
Yeah, just like dorking out this interview.
No, dude, I get it because you know it's such a huge it's like a pipe dream, and then suddenly it happens.
Then we did the studio with her, and that was all super epic, and she was super like. This fucking guy, man. Super epic is another one that's ticked him off, I can tell.
I'm going to have these all as sound bites at the start of the interview. Also, first use of the word dork on my page.
There you go.
Well,
I mean, this is, we are dorks. Yeah, we're Caroline Polachek dorks. And now friends, I guess. Kind of, maybe not after this. We had a really good time working with her. She was the best, as you'd expect. So friendly, but like such a pro. Unbelievable singer, like her takes were crazy. It was just really, I think, really good for us to watch someone record like that, basically, and her like dedication to the part, and she was making notes the whole session, all this stuff that I guess we probably wouldn't even think about in a recording context.
With our band, it's just not like a studio band, really. It's like, it's much slower than that. Like, it's rare that we're like, let's get in the studio, do a load of takes, listen to the takes and like comp stuff. Yeah,
it was just really good to watch someone doing it like that.
This second album, feature aside, even still, it's a bit of a departure from your first record. I'm curious as to what the through line is from your perspective between the two albums.
The mention of auto-tune in a lot of interviews has made me realize that it seemed like a huge decision to use like vocal processing, etc., and lots of other like new sounds that we kind of took for granted as kind of like an obvious thing that we would do. It's just been kind of eye-opening that from the perspective of someone who wasn't on the journey of making the record, loads of these things seem like a huge step to make, but yeah, from our perspective, not so much. It's been like very incremental, and like the reasons why we thought something sounded good like were so gradual and feel very obvious in that way. I guess my point is, it's hard for me to see how much of a contrast that there really is. There's always been this thing of like trying to present multiple worlds, artificial and organic, those two worlds colliding. We were trying to do that on the first album, I think, but like this is maybe like extremifying that.
It's a reflection on the interests of the band, how it's developed from this kind of collagey, pastoral, perhaps it's maybe soundtracky-esque, style to much more refined, and I don't know, like it feels like a bit more decisive, maybe.
There's a real catharsis in the album. I'm wondering what sort of demands that makes of you as performers, bringing that into a live setting.
It's a hard one with Caroline shows because this is something that I think we've always been pretty good at, immodestly, is like the performance as a group and as a bunch, and coming from touring those together, I don't know, I think we've just found a really good way to communicate live, which I think is what people who come to Caroline shows generally really enjoy. But there's a freeness to what we're doing that requires lots of visual communication, basically, and we've become, again, immodestly, really good at it. We're good at it because we've done loads of shows together, and it's just, I don't know, it's how the shows are like what they're like now.
This was like a self-produced record, like me and Casper and Jasper produced it, really. So we kind of knew the guts of all the sounds. It was easy to kind of pick the songs apart now that they were produced. The way we recorded them was quite different to the way they eventually were finished in some way. So there's a lot of decision making about is this something that just needs to remain a recorded thing, a recorded aspect, or shall we try and recreate some element of this in the live setting beyond the sound of just a group of people playing? Is this kind of like conceptually valid to insist that this is still part of reproducing the song every time you do it? And a lot of the time you don't need to like shove every single thing in from the recorded version, because that's not like the point of the song. We're always negotiating like how to play the song in the moment of playing it, and I think that's kind of perceivable. We did a set a few months ago, like before we'd toured a lot more, and it felt like very on the edge of like being kind of out of control, and we said like that felt so precarious to our friend, and she said the whole point of it is that it's precarious. It's like a key part of what it's like to watch you play, and I was very happy to hear that.
That's the magic, isn't it? It could all fall apart at any second.
Yeah.
It's kind of a weird part of it. It's like, it still feels a little bit obviously it's nerve-wracking to play live, but like, it's nerve-wracking. You do kind of feel like you're jumping into the unknown a little bit with Caroline shows. Things are so tense anyway, which is... Yeah, between us, we're not really friends, to be honest. I'm sick of these a-holes.
It's date 4 of the tour, and things are frosty.
Yeah, literally, we're sick of each other, mate. It's just a shit show.
It's not true.
No, we love each other a lot. It's good vibes.
You've been touring this album for a little while now. You just got back from Japan, and third show of the Europe tour.
Yeah.
What's the response been like to touring Caroline too?
It's been pretty good. It's good. Like, as we say, the DIY-ness, we're on the merch desk ourselves, which is pretty fun as well. I'm normally the one head of retail for the band. People say some really crazy shit to us, like profoundly, like they're pretty happy with us, which is always pretty weird to hear. It's really nice, but it's like some people came from America to Amsterdam, they said specifically to see us. So if that's true, that's crazy. When we were in Japan, people flew from Shanghai to watch us play, like Hong Kong stuff. Like, we were like, it's just crazy to us. It's pretty unfamiliar. We got so used to playing to like dead silent rooms, which was a badge of honor because it meant we had the kind of people were listening to us, which we still get quite a lot, but we're getting like whooping and cheering and stuff, which is kind of almost funny to us because it's like a rock gig now. We're like, what the fuck is going on a little bit?
It is so fun. There were aspects of that before, but it wasn't really like watching like a band gig, but it's like much closer to that now. I think especially in New York, the crowd was really like, yeah, like during the show, and it had honestly never ever happened.
Like rattle everyone a little bit.
No, it was amazing though. It was amazing. It was like, I feel so hyped up by the way this crowd is being, and it had never happened before. But now we managed to like cultivate something like that every time we play, because it's just like kind of like a loud and intense experience.
I got one last question for you guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you could play me any album, what would you play me?
World of Echo by Arthur Russell.
Of course.
I mean, everyone loves Arthur Russell, so it's kind of an obvious choice, but it's kind of the best album ever made. It's so kind of like conceptually immersive, and I like to think our band does this too. There's a piece of music and you hear it, and you need repeat listens to really understand what you're hearing, and then you realize buried in there is like a really nice pop song, and basically every track on that record is that, and I'm just such a sucker for that.
Kind of Blue by Miles Davis is like so epically important to listen to. The 8 players who are literally at the top of their game. They're all the best players in the world, and he got them together for 3 days of recording, and it's just like, it's a fucking masterpiece, man. It's all the tunes sound so good. Improvising at like its highest order. It's creative. It's just crazy. Even if you don't like jazz, it sounds really good. He's got one now.
You've inspired me
Okay, good.
because you've gone down into Jazz Town.
Cool.
Into Jazz Town.
This is a pretty dorky interview.
Yeah, good.
I love it.
Okay, you made me think of Lewis Moholo. It's called Spirits Rejoice. It is so good and so euphoric and just unbelievably beautiful. The last track is crazy. It's a tearjerker. Amazing.
I'd add one more to the list, but it's not an album.
Do it.
It's a symphony by Mahler, Gustav Mahler. I've been listening to it loads on this tour. It's his 6th symphony, and it's a belter. He's the reason film music sounds like it does, but also contemporary classical music in a lot of ways. He's just such an important composer from early 20th century, late 19th century. He wrote 9 mega symphonies, and the 6th one is unreal. Go for it. You can be bothered.
I can. Freddie and Mike
Pleasure.
from Caroline.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much.